Good evening, everyone. It's Necro Thursday, and this is a bit of a departure from our normal fare here at Necromaniacs podcast. It's me and the quality control manager, Rennie Resmini. We went down to Nightlands Festival this past weekend at Hamilton, New Jersey, at Cathedral, this incredible structure basically in the middle of not even suburban South Jersey, like country. It's out there, really far out there in the sticks. And it was the site of the first ever Nightlands Festival, brought to us by Cadabra Records and Chipoters Press. And for those of you who aren't familiar, Cadabra Records is a vinyl-only spoken word label that brings you the best high-quality weird fiction, the likes of which include H.P. Lovecraft, Arthur Machen, Thomas Ligotti, etc. You get the picture. It's that kind of thing. Impeccably narrated by such luminaries as John Paget and impeccably scored by a variety of different composers. A lot of the work is done by Chris Bozzone, who I interviewed on Everything Went Black a few months ago. So if you want to check out that interview, we kind of go in depth about what the label is all about and talk about music and that sort of thing. So this is the first installment of Nightlands Festival. It was a really, really great time. There was a pre-show in Haddonfield, New Jersey at the Book Restoration Bindery, and it was a more intimate setting where John and Chris performed Pictures of Apocalypse, the brand new Thomas Ligotti poetry book in its entirety, along with some selections from Noctuary, which is a repress of an older work that Ligotti did that is going to be put out on Chipoters Press, the publishing arm of Cadabra Records. And there's going to be an LP version of it coming out as well. So Rennie and I went down. We hung out. We had a great time. I was able to catch up with Chris and Jonathan Denisson to get their take at the end of the night. It was literally at the very, very end on Saturday night after 2 days of really cool, weird fiction. And, Chris was exhausted. He did all the heavy lifting as far as performances went. He was on stage for almost the entire time. So, he was gracious enough to speak with me at the end of the evening. And, we talked about the whole event and, how excited he was to have all this stuff happen. And Jonathan Denisson is the owner, founder of the label. And, we're hoping to have these guys be our extended Necromaniacs family. So if you guys are interested in this sort of thing, for sure, do yourself a favor and go to cadabrarecords.com. They have beautiful, limited vinyl of all this stuff. They have books. There's actually figures on there, too, if you guys are into collecting figures. And, if you're into Lovecraft and weird fiction and cosmic horror and, Thomas Ligotti and, real stuff like that, definitely check it out. Before we get started, I just want to remind everyone to check out the other podcasts by the Horsemen of the Podcasting Apocalypse. And, of course, I'm referring to Brandon Legion's Horror Wolf 666, Jackie Smith's Into the Necrosphere, Everything Went Black, which is a you get what you get style show from me on Wednesdays. And then following Thursday, Necromaniacs. Friday, Break the Apocalypse with Mike Scandato's brother, John. And Sunday, the Dark Lord, Carl Hikara, brings you Soul Knocks. We're at Nightlands Festival, day 2, here in lovely Hamilton, New Jersey. And I'm with our quality control manager, Rennie. How's it going, man?
Very good. Yes, we are going to be ritually sacrificed at this place.
We're at Cathedral, which is actually a really cool spot, man. It's like the outside of the building, it looks like it would be in a horror movie, right?
Definitely.
Like some kind of 70s devil movie, like Devil's Reign or something like that. I could imagine the building being in the middle of the desert, like some prairie.
Yeah.
And Ernest Borgnine hanging out in there.
Most definitely.
Yeah, but it's not. It's actually in South Jersey. There's trees around, there's traffic, there's people, I've never been to this town before. Have you ever been here before?
No, I've never been to Hamilton.
Yeah.
I've been through it.
It's kind of out of the way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
20 miles away from Atlantic City.
Yeah, yeah. It's in that part of the state. And what interesting thing last night, yeah, I stayed with you, Rennie. You know, you're gracious enough to allow me to stay at your house last night.
And put up with the dogs, the hellhounds.
But I came down from my place in Jersey, up north, and Rennie came out here from Philly, and we had 2 cars, and I was like, maybe leave the car here, right, and forgetting that we're in the country, right, where no one's gonna rob you or your car's not gonna get towed. So we were talking to the people at the place, and they were. I think you asked them, right?
Yeah, because we were going to put one of the vehicles at the train station.
Yeah, and the guy was like, "Oh, you just park it in the parking lot," and of course, I'm like, "Okay, cool," but in the back of my mind, I'm like, "There's some scam going on here. Like, this guy's gonna, I'm gonna come back tomorrow. My car's gonna be gone, or the tires are gonna be off it, or something like that."
Chop shopped somewhere.
But hey, it came back here today, and everything's cool, and we just watched the first performance of the day. It was a live music and narration of the Algernon Blackwood classic, The Willows. And some can say that is one of the first weird fiction tales ever.
Yes.
Is that something you like that?
Yeah, I like Blackwood's short fiction, the stuff that I have read. That's probably his most well-known, other than the Wendigo.
Yeah, those are probably his 2 go-to stories for people. But the dude, and I only really have read a handful of his stories, and but apparently the guy lived to be like almost 100 years old, yeah. I think, and which was odd for a guy who was born in 1869. And there's I guess Hippocampus is planning on releasing a 6 volumes complete omnibus of his material, and so far only the first 2 volumes are out.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Those guys, they curate a lot of great work, a lot of Lovecraft,
Arthur Machen.
Yeah. Was there Bierce in there too? Maybe.
I don't know if Ambrose Bierce was published by them, but that would make sense though.
Yeah, Michael Shea, who's pretty underrepresented. I always liked his stuff. I think
Shea was the kind of low life weird fiction. It's if you're telling mythos tales that involve drug dealers and prostitutes and things like that.
Yes. And some people may recognize his name from that Netflix series where the autopsy story, his story, The Autopsy, showed up. The Del Toro.
Oh man! Cabinet of Curiosities. Oh, okay.
Yes.
I didn't realize that was a Michael Shea story.
Yes, that's The Autopsy that is part of this Hippocampus collection.
So I did a few months ago. I did an episode of Everything Went Black that was with Chris Bozzone, who was one of the main composers at Cadabra Records, and it was about the label and the Chipoters Press, which is the associated publishing company. And we talked about this festival, which at that point was upcoming months in advance. So the fest is finally here, Nightlands Festival. We did not talk about it on Necromaniacs, though. So some of you guys out there who do not listen to Everything Went Black, this might be news to you. However, if you follow any of our Instagram accounts, I've been posting about this thing kind of leading up to it. So just a little background, and I'm going to try to catch up with those guys later today, maybe get a few words from them about the whole festival. So stay tuned, later in the episode. The label is dedicated to spoken word with musical accompaniment of mostly weird fiction, primarily weird fiction and cosmic horror. They have releases, they're heavy on Thomas Ligotti, heavy on H.P. Lovecraft. There's that Rampo, The Human Chair that came out, which was read yesterday, actually. That was part of yesterday's programming. And yeah, just if you're into that kind of stuff, it's a very unique, sort of very specific type of label that has vinyl-only releases of this stuff. So you can't find this digitally. it's a physical, tactile release. So, CadabraRecords.com, go check it out. And really interesting stuff. And then they also have the whole arm of the company, the press, the Chipoters Press, which releases books. And what just came out and what was the actual pre-show to the festival happened at another location, the Book Restoration Bindery in Haddonfield, New Jersey. I initially I thought Haddonfield and Hamilton would be close together, but they're not.
They're not, no.
They're kind of far away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now that pre-show happened on Thursday, and that was to celebrate the release of Pictures of the Apocalypse by Thomas Ligotti, which is his first published work in probably like over 10 years, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think what the last thing I grabbed was Spectral Voice.
That might have been the last thing that came out by Ligotti. So that was at this really, really nice space. This really, really nice lady, Monique, runs it, and it's you walk in and it's all just old books, and she is a professional restorer of, probably like super rare books. Like the vibe I got is like you go in, if you've got like some super limited book that's like $1,000 or something like that, some collector's edition, she'll rebind it and restore it back to its original condition so that you can charge $2,000 for it instead. So it's like a super niche, it's like one of those cool things that people do, So the event was at this space, and it was John Padgett, who runs Grimscribe Press and is also a voice performer, and Chris Bozzone performed the entire Pictures of Apocalypse record, basically. So, and then they also did a couple selections from Noctuary, which is their next reissue of Ligotti's material. So that was Thursday night's event, and it was pretty awesome. It was great. It was something that's brand new for me as far as experiencing something like that. I don't know, I've never really experienced anything like that before.
Nah, this is definitely a first time thing. It almost reminds me of some of the industrial and power electronic shows, but way more subdued, obviously. It's same aesthetic, synthesizers, some electroacoustic accompaniment with narration. And the guys that are doing the narration for this are pretty on top of their game, very theatrical in spots. They know how to deliver. That's an interesting thing, very niche. It's kind of a lot over 2 days where you're getting bombarded like this. It's different.
I'm all about this whole thing, man, because it's exactly the kind of fiction I read, and the music aspect of it too. It accompanies the narratives perfectly, I think, and it's just I don't know, it's interesting. It's almost like seeing a band play, really.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, power electronics kind of noise thing. But yeah, so there's some great vendors here. Our friend Paul Romano's here.
Yeah, Paul and Jeremy
Hush. Hippocampus is here.
The Archive.
Yep. The Vinegar Syndrome. I just dropped some money on a new the box set or whatever you want to call it of Martin, which that's been out. You haven't been able to find that for a long time.
No,
right?
And it's already going through the roof.
Yeah.
Price-wise.
I saw the price, but I was like, you know what, man, you only live once. I don't have any expensive habits.
Yet.
I don't do cocaine or anything like that. So it's why not buy this?
The weekend is young.
Yeah, why not buy this thing, man, and have it? And it's a nice package too, man. It's got a book, mad extras, and just really Vinegar Syndrome usually does a good job on that stuff.
I'm trying to think, what did I grab? I grabbed something from Indicator from the Archive. That was it. Requiem for a Village.
Yeah. I already spent way too much money, but I was since I've decided to go to this thing, since I discovered this thing, I had a budget set for myself, and I'm staying within that budget, and I'm like, all right, cool. I'm gonna give myself a few $100s to spend here because I knew there was gonna be tons of stuff, and you know, and I'm sticking within that budget though. You know, I'm not going too crazy
Yet.
Well, it's, you know, it's still afternoon, but you still got the rest of the day and tomorrow. You know, and it's you know, but it's been really cool. You know. Was there anything specific that you focused in on during this this event?
I just wanted to see how it was going to go down. I was real curious to see how this was going to be pulled off at that inaugural event. Like I said, it's interesting. Like you said, it's almost a band vibe, but spoken word. But it's a little more than spoken word.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's a theatrical element to it. What we just saw with the Willows was probably the best one we've seen out of the performances yet.
I think so, yeah. That was like super compelling, you know. And also ST Joshi's there.
Yeah.
And that's for me a high point. You know, any of you guys out there who follow the social media, it's the Instagram. I've posted about this weekend. You see pictures of me and ST Joshi standing next to each other, and really cool. Anyone who's into, like, you know, weird fiction or cosmic horror, he has something to do with writing about it in like sort of like a scholarly way, or any kind of annotated texts of Clark Ashton Smith or H.P. Lovecraft. The better volumes of that work usually has annotations by Joshi.
Yeah, he's great, and he's a good character too. When you see him, he does when he's doing the intros. He's real personable. Just go up, talk to the guy, no problem. Matthew Bartlett's here too.
Yep.
He's great. I always liked his fiction. I didn't realize how much stuff he actually has, like, published. That kind of threw me for a loop. I was like, wow, there's this much stuff. I have like 4 things of his. He's got quite a selection.
Yeah, I picked up some of his stuff too, actually.
And I think where I learned of him first was through Dim Shores, through Sam Cowan's. He had the publishing branch. It's all small chapbook and small, you know, limited publication run.
Where I learned about Dim Shores is actually through you. You hit me to that brand.
And
so.
It's funny because John, who's doing this festival from Cadabra, I've kind of met him a while back on those Legati boards.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's funny. That's definitely where I met Sam, was on that. It's funny, like, how stuff ties in together. Like, it's weird. Small world. Funny thing.
What I discovered about John yesterday, actually, was that, well, first I didn't know he lives in Syracuse. Okay.
Yeah, I knew that from The Promise.
Yeah, and I didn't know that he was in any of these bands.
Yeah, it's
he was
funny.
in Earth Crisis and The Promise.
Yeah.
And probably others that I don't know.
Yeah, that I'm not too sure about. Yeah, it's funny.
And and he also, we have a lot of common friends because though none of the bands I've played in are actually wherever, like, you know, connected in any way to that, like, Syracuse scene. We played up there a handful of times and, like, got to make some really good friends in Syracuse, and John knows all those guys, which I think is an added bonus, you know.
Yeah, I think we've only played there once.
Kind of a weird place in general.
It was a creepy time that we had there.
Care to elaborate on that?
I can't.
Without implicating anyone.
Yeah. We played a show in Albany one night with All Out War, and I drove through a snowstorm to this house in Syracuse, where Todd would wake up in the middle of the night with a guy hovering over him, admiring his hair.
Was this like a real person or like
Oh,
some
yeah,
kind
it
of,
was
like,
a real
entity or
person, so
something?
I'm sure people in Syracuse know that person.
Okay.
So we'll just leave it at that. It was kind of creepy experience there. We played with Prima and Conviction at that show, and we got the hell out of Dodge.
But that's so yeah. It turns out that we have a lot of friends in common, and I don't know. This is cool, and, like, you realize how small the world is, you know.
Yeah, I had no idea that John was doing Cadabra. Like, I didn't know who was behind that until this weekend. That kind of like threw me for a loop. I was like, what? It's crazy.
Well, the funny thing, and before we started this podcast, because I was asking John, I was talking to him. I was like, hey, man, I'd like to get a couple words from you just about the fest, maybe as things wind down, Eddie's just like, yeah, like, I don't really like talking too much, but, you're cool. It's like, I know you, and,
He was great yesterday on stage.
Yeah, dude, he was great they had a whole thing yesterday where they had the 3 primary readers of the day, and he was like the MC, man, and he did a great job.
Yeah, he was awesome.
I was like, what do you mean? You're natural on the mic, man. So anyway, but I'm going to catch up to him later. We're going to talk a little bit more about this thing and everything, but where was I going with this? I was talking about John, like his, what I learned about John. So this is the point I was trying to make, is that he's not comfortable talking, and apparently. So when I first reached out to someone from Cadabra, he directed me to Chris Bozzone, and he's like, oh yeah, Chris is like, he's the guy, he's like the master of ceremonies here. He'll talk to you. He's like the mouthpiece. I'm like, all right, cool. And I was like, this fucking guy, like, doesn't want to talk to me, you know what I mean? I was like, oh, it's like some mysterious figure, like, in the background. Because then I also discovered that, he's an artist, too, and his artwork is great.
That's funny. Yeah.
His art's awesome, you know what I mean? And I'm just like, oh, he's one of these, like, artsy, like, dudes who, like, just wants to be in the shadows, and, like, I don't talk to, I don't do press or whatever, which is completely the opposite. Like, Jonathan's like a really, really cool, like, down-to-earth guy, but he just doesn't want to fucking talk to people necessarily. So it's an honor that he's going to appear on this show. It's one of the few times people are probably going to hear his voice, actually. So
if you weren't here,
if you weren't one of the people that's here, and then so Chris kind of stepped up. He's like press guy, also the primary composer on a lot of the records that gets released by Cadabra. And he's been doing work today. He's been putting in work in these last 3 days.
You definitely got to pick his brain about the composition.
Yeah. We talk a little bit about that on the Everything Went Black episode. But he's been working overtime since Thursday, bro.
Right.
Thursday night, full set. They played the entire LP of Pictures of the Apocalypse, all the selections from there. Plus, like I said earlier, some selections from Noctuary, which is a forthcoming release by them. Yesterday, he played like probably half of the event. Like he performed like almost all day yesterday, and then he just wrapped up the Algernon Blackwood Willows set.
And it's not like what he's doing is physical, like a normal, like what you guys do with metal or hardcore, but it's pretty cerebral. He's got to think on the fly. He's doing stuff with synth and, like I'm saying, and guitar.
Yeah.
And it's not like a DJ where, this stuff's pre-prepared and he can just hit play. He's actually playing. So he is thinking, he's working. It's a pretty cool.
Yeah. There's another dude, I haven't figured out what he's doing. There's that other guy that's on stage with him. I don't know what his function is just yet.
Nah.
It's like a laptop.
Yeah, 2 laptops, and I didn't know if he was doing the audio or if he's doing the visual aspect, but there's not much going on with the visual.
Not
couple
much.
Imagery, like some imagery changes. He might be lending some that subharmonic noise along with the synth, maybe. I don't know.
I could see that. I'll have to ask Chris about that when we talk to him later. But yeah, he's been putting in work, man. He's been, and this is like,
it's definitely a labor of love, because this isn't some kind of money-making a thing for these guys. It's definitely, they're into what they're doing. It's a limited runs of everything, so that actually makes things more expensive on their end. It's crazy. Like, it's, going into this, you're going to lose. It's your inaugural event. You're going to lose.
Yeah, regardless of what
it's crazy.
Even like
he's flying in all these guys from the UK, out west, just organizing this, getting the venues straight. It's pretty crazy. It's an undertaking.
The thing that really impressed me is, you guys listen to me talk every week, and I fumble over my words. I got a horrible accent, like I sound like a fucking plumber half of the time.
It's because we are construction workers.
But like, watching a guy like John Padgett narrate these stories, and I've tried narrating stuff too. Like anyone who is on the Patreon for Everything Went Black has like there's episodes up there of me narrating things. It's fucking hard to do that shit, man. It's hard to like narrate something, even if I'm just recording it like into a Pro Tools session.
Right.
You know, you're like even simple words you'll fuck up. Like I am or whatever. You'll fuck it up. You'll find a way to make a mistake.
Yeah, these guys have been thorough. Everything's enunciated well. They definitely have theatrical backgrounds. Yeah. They even mentioned that when they had their Q&A and yesterday. They're gifted guys, man. Yeah. It definitely takes a talent to do what they do.
And you know, I constantly forget lyrics too, like when I'm performing in the band.
Yeah, but you got an excuse. You're also playing guitar.
But nonetheless, I forget words to songs. So I'm watching these guys. There's really like a very minimal musical thing going on. It's a tone, very ambient sounding music happening. And the center point of the performance is the narration.
Right.
Right. So this guy is front and center. They're like, oh, you know, people are there watching you. That is the meat of the performance is the spoken part. And dude, for the most part, it's not only do they not fuck up the words, it's like we're done with intention and a lot of and like a theatrical twist to it. Yeah. You know, like they're acting out, especially the dude who did.
Yeah, the Willows.
Yeah, the guy was like
awesome. Really
projecting, and he was like, you know, he was emoting through the whole performance, and you know, it's a condensed version of the story because I think the Willows itself was like 90 pages or something like that.
Yeah, I can't remember. It's been a while since I've read that.
Let's say it's an even 100 pages, between 70 and 100 pages maybe. So to read something like that in real time would take a long time. So it's a condensed version of the story. But still, the guy delivered and it was like on point. And that was probably, as much as I love John Padgett, that was probably the standpoint, the centerpiece of the weekend so far.
Definitely.
Yeah. But yeah, it was, you know.
And it looks like Padgett's going to be doing the Legati selections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't read his work. Like I subscribe to his publication Vastarian, which is like comes out periodically, but I haven't read his own fiction. But you have though, right?
Yes, I have read that one short story book. He's very much like Legati in a way. He definitely has his differences. You know, he's influenced by Legati, but he admits that himself. You know, and he also had mentioned yesterday how he has had a fascination since growing up with puppetry, mannequins, you know, that stuff that kind of comes in with Legati too.
Does anyone selling Padgett's book out there?
I didn't notice it here, but you can get it online. I remember. For some reason he isn't selling it here, which is weird.
Huh. Now I'm intrigued because you know, like I said, I've only known him as a narrator and as a guy who curates other fiction, and I have not read his book yet. But now, after hearing him talk about his fascination with puppetry and ventriloquism and stuff, and that, for anyone out there who hasn't read much Legati, like mannequins and invisible strings guiding inanimate human figures through the world, is a huge part of his underlying philosophy that's in a lot of his stories. You know, how there's like this unseen mechanical force like driving everything forward, you know, and not necessarily a soul, you know, which is one of those things that comes up in the darkness, the shadow, which is like, you know, we're just material, but then there's like this deeper mechanical force driving everything forward. And I think that's what Legati's like fascination with marionettes and maybe even Padgett's like, you know, puppetry fascination kind of ties into that a little bit.
Yeah. And I'm curious too with the Legati thing, since True Detective from years back, how that's impacted for John and the label. You know, did people like suddenly look for Legati, find Cadabra Records, and like learn stuff through there, because Legati isn't super like well known.
No.
He's like an author's author, but definitely like true detective, mining some of Legati's work. There was some attention being thrown towards him after that first season, I should say.
Yeah, definitely. Like the scene where Rust Cole like basically breaks down his pessimistic philosophy is it's a pretty much like
conspiracy against the human race.
Yep, exactly. It's the same. Even by calling himself a pessimist, is like part of that whole Schopenhauer-esque conspiracy against the human race philosophical book that Legati wrote, which is like not one of his. It's like his nonfiction book. And that's interesting about that show because no one. I feel like the King in Yellow and Robert Chambers and all that stuff is even Wagner, like Carl Edward Wagner. Someone believe it or not, after talking to a bunch of people here today, completely unfamiliar with
him. Yeah, and that's because it was out of print for so damn long.
Yeah.
And so Valancourt has come up and knocked it out of the park with that reissue.
Yeah.
So hopefully somebody reissue some of his other work too.
One of the things I'd like to find out about Cadabra is like, they don't have any Chambers stuff either. They don't have any Robert Chambers. They don't have any King in Yellow or like any of the short stories from that volume. I'm just curious if they plan on ever doing one of those.
Yeah, it's definitely something to ask.
Yeah.
That would make sense. That's probably like so much to deal with what's in licensing and what's like available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, these are all good questions we should ask these guys later.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like there's like a
precursor.
Precursor to like a mini interview, I guess, with John and Jonathan and Chris.
As I asked John yesterday, I was like, Joel Lane, he would probably be an author that would be great for some of this narration, because all the short stories.
Yeah.
Something like that. Brian Avenson.
Yep.
Would be like really good too.
Yeah. So before we came over here today, we caught I watched a movie that I had never seen before called Mimic 3: The Sentinel.
Yeah.
What made you put that on this morning?
I scroll through the menu on the TV, and I see, this is coming on later. Let me put that on. You'll see like stuff pops up on my TV all the time. It'll jump from one thing to the other. But I just left that on because I think that movie's pretty like underrated. It's a total ripoff of like Rear Window mixed with the original Mimic. It's just a fun little movie, real fast. What's it? 77 minutes.
Yeah, it was like real short, man. It was like almost like very, very short, but it didn't feel like abbreviated at all.
No, it does what it needs to do in that time and gets out.
I didn't even know it existed. I gotta be honest. I know Mimic because Del Toro's film from like the late 97 or 98 or something like that, and I was like, it's a cool movie. I knew of a second one, but I did not know there was a third.
Yeah, and the third one I actually caught at Danger After Dark during one of the Philadelphia Film Fests. It was part of that curated thing, and J.T. Petty, who did The Sandman or S&M Man. It's one of his movies. And I didn't realize he was a Ubisoft creator. He cribs from Rear Window a lot with it and makes it like skeevier.
I was like really blown away by the movie, and it might even be I recommended it to after we were watching. I texted Mike and I was like, I actually, you know what? This might be a Jeff movie.
You think?
I don't know, man. Mike didn't even know of the existence of it.
And you said he's working at HBO for in some capacity.
But I know, man. Like he didn't know about it. I should text Jeff soon about it too. Jeff. You got to tell why I'm doing this. Yeah. Well.
Other than being here, there is a reason.
Yeah. All right. Jeff got attacked by a dog. Okay. This is a true story. So he's been incapacitated. So that's why we had a programming scheduled, right? But we had to revise that. So since Rennie and I are down here at the festival, we figured we'd give a little report on what's going on. So Jeff is back in action though next week, and he's fully healed, recovering, doing his thing. It wasn't that bad. Like he's okay, So don't. But maybe send some messages to him that you guys are thinking about him.
Yeah,
so,
get well.
Get well.
Unbelievable.
Flowers, maybe virtual flowers or something like that.
Rabies shots.
That would be the first thing that would terrify me. Well, the initial shock of having a wild animal or two wild animals attack me.
Well, you had that last night with the hellhounds.
Well, yeah, but they weren't. I didn't feel like I was in danger last night, though, really. Besides, just like they were going to... They're all good, man. But, like, that's terrifying enough, but then the aftermath is whether or not I contracted rabies or some savage, like, infection or something like that,
Crazy. Walking the dog, and it gets out of control. Unbelievable. And you were saying, like, she didn't even ask him if he was okay. Jeff's out doing his job, gets attacked.
Yeah, and it was all her apparent. Well, Jeff will tell the story, but
yeah,
my impression was her first thing was like, "It's not my dog." Like, not, "Are you okay? Oh my God, look at your blood. Are you bleeding? Can I help you somehow?" "Oh, this isn't my dog." That was her first reaction when this guy is this poor kid is attacked by these two dogs,
Unreal.
But yeah, Mimic, man. Mimic 3,
yes.
Sentinel. Right away I was like, man, this looks like a unique film. It was it had that vibe of a Hitchcock, like a color Hitchcock film. And we once again could not figure out where, place the city it was filmed in. It was people with American style English accents, being American accents speaking English rather. And there was an American flag, but the city looked like no American city I'd ever seen, and that added to the weirdness of the film.
Yeah, it definitely does. It's an odd movie to begin with. And it's the acting is so strange in spots. Like I said, it's like Rear Window, and I even mentioned while we were watching, it's because of the Hitchcock stuff, I was like, Mike, did you guys ever do Body Double?
Immediately I texted Scandato, and he responded, "No, we haven't." So I think that's something that's coming down the line for us. Maybe, we like doing horror adjacent stuff. Hitchcock is very much adjacent to most horror. I mean, some of his stuff is straight up horror.
Yeah, The Birds and Psycho.
Yeah, but something like Body Double, Brian De Palma. We have done a Brian De Palma film. We did Dress to Kill, an American giallo film.
Did you ever do Carrie?
No.
There's another De Palma.
There you go. But yeah, Body Double though, perfect. Be a great film for Necromaniacs. It's one of my favorites that he's done. Really, it's got a young Melanie Griffith in it.
Yep.
It's got that one guy that's in it. The dude that you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name.
And
but that
Frankie
guy.
Goes to Hollywood.
Frankie Goes to Hollywood video. It's like a surreal ass movie.
That was like the Fellini moment in that movie.
Yes, very much. Good call.
know.
Fellini moment in that movie.
Not the Yardbirds, but Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
And it's also just got this grimy vibe to it, this grimy LA Hollywood showbiz kind of thing going on in it.
Yeah.
And it's just a really good sleazy ass movie. It kind of predated the erotic thriller craze, I think, of the 90s.
Yeah, because it's like 83 maybe?
It might, yeah.
It's the early 80s, that movie. I can't remember. I'd have to look it up.
We're sitting in a parking lot right now, so it's hard to us to look these things up.
Yeah.
So it's we're gonna estimate that it came out in the early 80s. The 90s, of course, you had the Michael Douglas canon of films.
Yes.
With
Sharon Stone doing her thing.
Yeah.
She had a couple that she was doing her thing in.
But when I think of erotic thrillers, I think of Michael Douglas, though. And it's
taken after his old man.
Yeah. was it Basic Instinct with Sharon Stone?
Yes.
Yeah. The thing, when I think of that movie, I don't think about the obvious stuff, like Sharon Stone's vagina. I don't think about that necessarily. But I think about Michael Douglas in that disco with that horrible V-neck sweater that he's wearing.
That's awesome.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like when people say, "Oh, have you ever seen Basic Instinct?" I go, "Yeah," and I think a fucking picture of Michael Douglas in the dance club with this awful V-neck brown sweater. Like, who wears that out to go dancing?
Michael Douglas does, man.
It's just like he's like a cop, He's like gets rough with women a lot and stuff. It's just like some '90s shit,
That and Black Rain, wasn't that the one with Andy Garcia in Tokyo?
Black Rain was a good one.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah,
but his whole racing motorcycles thing in that.
Black Rain was a pretty solid movie, I thought, and definitely within his like canon of '90s films. Speaking of Andy Garcia. Internal Affairs is
the best. Richard Gere is the sleaze bag in that. He's awesome in that. I love that flick. It's the great neo-noir.
Yeah.
That's like something that you'd think James Ellroy would have done.
It very much has an Ellroy-like vibe to it, for sure. But, that's, I don't know, it's just, that's a movie that, like, it verges on that erotic thriller at times, but it's definitely more of like a neo-noir, I would say.
Yeah, even maybe a little Abel Ferrara if he was in L.A. That has like some of that, like that look, the color scheme to it, like King of New York, red, white, blue color scheme going on. Especially with some of those weird sequences when he's hanging out with the hookers.
That's very much Abel Ferrara, hanging out with prostitutes and sleazy ass people. Yeah, actually, that scene does definitely remind me of something from a Ferrara film. Well, let's go back in, man, and check out what's going on, and hopefully, fairly soon, probably seconds from now, you guys will be hearing some talks with Jonathan Denisson of Cadabra Records. And Chris Bozzone of Cadabra Records as well. And those guys are in the middle of it, so I want to wait for maybe the day to kind of wind down a little bit and catch up with them. Congratulate them on the success of the first inaugural episode, or event here, rather than episode. And just catch up with them and see what they got to say about everything. So, stand by. Fortunately, I had a chance to catch up with Jonathan Denisson and Chris Bozzone at the end of the night. So here we go. This is what they had to say about the event.
All right, what you
So
got?
Jonathan, you're a man of few words, man. You know what I mean? You're a guy that's, you've said quite a few words tonight. However, you're sort of like mysterious in a lot of ways. Because when I first reached out to you guys, I spoke with Chris, and I was like, oh, Jonathan Denisson is a mysterious figure in the background running a mysterious record label called Cadabra Records. So I'm so happy to finally have you here. You and I have been talking quite a bit over the last couple of days. And I just wanted to congratulate you on the first installment of Nightlands Festival. So how's it feel to have this thing wrapped up finally?
Hey, I greatly appreciate it. And as far as what you had just mentioned, I don't need to say much because I hope that the work I do speaks for itself. We've had a blast at Nightlands. We had an incredible amount of talent perform, and I think we've exceeded expectations. I think a lot of people walked in not really knowing what to expect. And of the history of doing Cadabra Records, the biggest uphill struggle has always been trying to get people to understand what we do. And people say, oh, you do audiobooks. It's not a damn audiobook. It's scored with music, and it's a performance. So people got to see that live, and we had a lot of fun. I mean, so much incredible talent, and yeah.
Yeah, it's actually, I definitely want to underscore the fact that it's not an audiobook. And one of the things that I likened it to, and it's not at all like this, but old power electronics performances where there might be some element of narrative associated with it. And it's like that, but it's way more subtle, and it's focused 100% on weird fiction and cosmic horror. Seeing it perform live is frankly like watching a band perform in a lot of ways, especially with some of the artists that have worked together, prior on, more extensively, like Chris and John Padgett. There's an energy on stage where there's definitely an energy going on in a band, like almost like a band setting. So the records are great if you're into weird fiction and you enjoy like subtle ambient music. But I really felt like seeing it perform live took it to a whole different dimension for me.
Absolutely. I think the two complement each other, between the music and the reader. As far as the music goes, I always refer to it as the shadow on the wall approach, where the music's subtle enough where it's not intrusive upon the reader and the story itself. And my goal is to have the listener to still use their imagination to create a visual picture on what they're listening to without the music really spelling that out for them. There's another medium such as full cast audio plays, which will have sound effects. It's almost a comic book version of a story, and I've done some of those. It's a complete different beast. Yeah, with their single reader productions, we really tried to separate the two, and we sort of coined that recipe on very subtle music that again is not intrusive, but definitely creates a tone that gives a certain elegance to what you're listening to, and at the same time creating a sonic nightmare. That's one way to put it. But yeah, so in short, there you go.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I learned, because like Rennie and I were discussing how one of our favorite collective authors, Robert W. Chambers, to our knowledge, was not represented with Cadabra, but I learned that that's not true. So did you guys? I think you guys have like an early release with Robert W.
Yeah,
Chambers,
yeah, we've done the Yellow Sign, okay. and yeah, that was with Maurizio Gianni, who from Goblin, and that record's incredible, and that's read by Anthony D.P. Mann, and that's one of our great early releases. Still a great release, still in print too, so definitely grab it. That thing's incredible, and we've done a 7-inch with some of the short poetry within that same collection, called Carcosa. Obviously, Ambrose Bierce did Carcosa, mm-hmm. but the Chambers Carcosa 7-inch is also brilliant. I mean, it's again, it's elegant, and it's a poetry. It's a little bit different beast from the Yellow Sign. It's still part of that same cycle.
Right. Yeah. That's awesome, man. I'm gonna have to look for that then, because I missed that on the site when I was looking into what you guys had going on.
Yeah. A lot. I mean, I think about 8 years has gone by with Cadabra, and we're like right now I'm submitting my maybe 100th and 15th official release, and there's been like another 30 of like half releases of just musical companions to some of these records. So time has flown by, and I myself sometimes have to refer to Discogs to even remember what catalog number things are.
Yeah. Some might say time is a flattened circle in some circles. So.
Right. Yep.
Well, thanks a lot, Jonathan. I appreciate it. You're wrapping things up right now, and I don't want to, interfere with any of that stuff.
Oh, you're good. I appreciate the interview, and your hospitality's been nothing but awesome.
Oh, dude, thank you.
Support.
Thank you very much. And it's been a pleasure coming down here and spending time with you guys, and I look forward to more stuff.
Absolutely.
All right,
Absolutely.
Jonathan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care. Oh, yeah, bro. So, Chris, the hardest working man of the weekend, dude. How does it feel to have this thing behind you now?
Feels great.
Yeah.
It was a lot of hard work, and it was worth it completely, because from what I can tell, people had a great time, and there was just such an incredible wealth of talent and diverse talent that was here this weekend. So between the unparalleled voice artists and the visual artists, and also Slasher Film Festival strategy, it was just a real wonderful thing to have so many amazing people in one space over the course of a few days.
Yeah, I had a great time, and I was talking to Jonathan earlier about it, and listening to the records is an excellent experience. You hear your favorite weird fiction being narrated by incredible voice artists, and with the musical score, but seeing it live, performance really adds a whole other dimension to it, and especially like the work you and John Padgett were doing is like, it's almost like a band. Like it very much feels like a band performance,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, I really think that when people experience Cadabra live for the first time, a lot of things probably click in terms of the inner workings of what goes into these records and how meticulously mapped out and planned they are in terms of the precision of the narration performance, in terms of the musical composition and the kind of cinematic approach, which is what makes Cadabra unlike anything else that's ever come before, is giving it this big cinematic feel to the spoken word tradition. And in respect to what you said about John Padgett and I, we've had the great fortune of performing a number of times over the last few years, and there's certain things that we can lock into immediately through that familiarity that we have in performance, and we can really kind of let loose because we've done this a number of times and have an ease with it, and can dial in the spirit of it, but then also kind of let loose with it, and there's improvisational elements. But that's kind of how I approach everything within this live experience for all of the voice artists, in that there is a very meticulously thought out and planned out script, if you will, of all of the different sections of the story,
Right.
and the themes that make up the musical score, and they're timed out to the second, to the exact line, between one passage to the next, to the next, to the next. But within that, there's an improvisational element, because in serving the story and in also serving the performance of the story in the moment live, the reader might have a certain level of intensity or subtlety that is a little different from the record.
Absolutely.
And you have to be responsive to that. And I think that that's a major part of the role of music in this very niche form of live performance.
Yeah, I picked up on that, and that's why I was like, it's very much like listening to your favorite band's record and then going and seeing them live, and there's just that added element to it, But yeah, thanks a lot, Chris.
Thank you.
This was
Mike.
like an incredible weekend. I had a great time. Me and Rennie both had a great time, and you must be exhausted.
Fantastic. And I'm tired, but it was all very much worth it, and I'm so thankful to Jonathan Denisson, the founder of Cadabra Records and the visionary behind the label, for making this a reality, because community is really important, and fostering such a wonderful community is just a really gratifying experience. And I'm sure you can attest to everyone that was here this weekend is an amazing person, and very talented, very diverse in their talents and their interests and their passions and their expertise. And to be in a room full of such inspirational people, that's what life is about, and keeps things going, and then keeps things, injects some magic into our daily lives.
Yeah, I mean, even for me, like it put some germs of ideas in my head too about the creative work that I do. Even coming here and experiencing this gave me another angle to look at the stuff that I do differently, and that's beautiful.
That's wonderful, and that's what it's all about. Is putting things out into the world and responding to things, and it generating more great work in an assortment of forms.
Well, thank you very much. This is awesome.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you hear the singing, you will know it is time. When you I had started into wakefulness.